Rewind live in 3, 2, 1, cue.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Welcome back to Political Insight Season 2.
40 minutes with political knowledge.
Oh, Khalid, we have Season 2 now.
Yeah, how are you, Sophia?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good too.
I'm so excited. This is our first day back.
Yes,
as
after the
host.
long break.
Yes, after this Corona break, after
Yeah.
semester break. Now we have the Season 2.
Season 2 coming back.
Right.
We are going to serve more insight to the publics, right?
Yes, and then this season we will have more guests and more interesting topics to discuss. So
Correct.
stay tuned on Political Insight. Okay, so today we're going to talk about SDG. So what is
SDG,
right?
Sophia? Can
So
you please
SDG
explain me?
Yeah, so SDG is Sustainable Development Goals, which are these goals set by the United Nations and has
Okay.
been applied by all members of the United Nations itself by 2015 to ensure that there will be no poverty, so most people will enjoy peace and prosperity, and then by 2030, all of them are being happy. So no
Correct.
poverty, no crime,
Correct.
everybody live in peace here and whatnot, right? So the 17 SDGs itself are integrated. That is, they recognize that action in one area will affect outcomes in others, and that development must balance social, economic, and environmental sustainability.
Yeah.
Through the pledge to leave no one behind, countries have committed to fast-track progress for those furthest behind first. That is why SDGs are designed to bring the world to several life-changing zeros, such as zero poverty, zero hunger, zero AIDS, and less discrimination to women and children as well. And everyone is needed to reach these ambitious targets. Creativity, know-how, technology, and financial resources from all society are necessary to achieve the SDGs in every context. So to know more, we check this video out, please. Okay, so those are the Sustainable Development Goals, the 17 ones set by United Nations that has been applied by most countries all over the world. And today we will discuss more about that with our special guest today. So who is
Okay.
our guest?
Who
Khalid?
is our guest? Can you please?
Okay, so our guest today is the famous lecturer in Political Science
Okay.
Department.
Wow.
And as far as I'm concerned, he was serving the Education Ministry as well,
Ministry
if I'm
of
not mistaken.
Education.
Yeah, so we please welcome Dr. Zainal Abidin. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, how are you, sir?
Alhamdulillah, bikhair.
Alhamdulillah, bikhair. Well, we'll speak in Arabic today. Yeah? That's very interesting. So, sir, you've been exposed into SDGs, and from the background that we have read that you are doing public policies and doing your bachelor degree and international relations as well. So, can you please tell us what is SDG in your opinion? What are the importance of SDG itself?
Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum. Thank you to the two hosts. I didn't get the chance to know the name. SDG is a very critical agenda of the world. Yeah. The meaning, an easy meaning to it would be any development that is happening should be taking into considerations of three factors. Means that there must be a balance between the developments that's happening economically. You've got to also consider the environmental aspect of it and the social impact of it.
Okay.
Means that the development, in another word, how to say is that development that is allowing that the next generation still enjoy the same thing that we're enjoying now. So that is sustainable development.
Okay.
Means that you can't be destroying the forest for the sake of development, because
Yes.
that would spoil the place for the Aborigine people, for
Yes,
example,
yes.
to stay there. and you can be having a very high-rise building,
Mhm.
while the fact there are still poor people surrounding the
Yeah.
buildings, living in the surrounding area.
Okay, so
So
it's about
mean
balancing.
It's a balanced development between the three important factors.
Okay, so what are the importance of having SDG in our country, sir?
The important is that we can be claiming that we've got a lot of development, modernization, and etc. But we must be sure that that development is enjoyed by everyone. There's no particular group of people only that will have access to that development. So sustainable developments mean is sustainable. Sustainable means all level of society have access to development.
So no discrimination.
There's no discrimination. There is equality. There is issues of balance between social strata and etc.
Oh,
So
yeah.
access to education. So we want to make sure that while we enjoying development, all levels of society of Malaysia would have access to the same thing.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's about balancing, right, and
Yeah,
discriminations.
but sir, don't you think it's too ambitious to achieve all of the goals set by them?
If you see it as one thing to be given to everyone, it is ambitious. But if you break it down, some people would need SDG 1. Some people would need SDG 2, 3, and 4, and so forth.
Exactly.
So if you look at the whole thing, maybe it looks ambitious in one particular objective. But if you consider that everyone would have their own issues and challenge. So that is why I don't think at all is an ambitious thing. But if you want to do at lump by single individual, single organization, that will be a bit ambitious. That's why SDG 17 is partnership. So you can't be
Ah.
achieving all the 17 without working together.
Working together.
Oh, so
Yes.
what kind of partnership we have in developing the SDG?
Okay. If you look at development, usually you'll see that sometimes development can be seen as driven by industry, by business people, by
Yeah.
profit-oriented organization.
Yeah, capitalism.
But here, when we talk about sustainable development, you got to include all the four factors, all the four stakeholders, which is called quadruple helix. So the first group is the people, is the society, is the NGOs. Or civil society. The second group is the government has to be there. The third group is the business people, the industry people, and the last one is the university people. So all the four has to be talking to each other. So that each one would represent different interests. Put them together, then you have a balanced perspective.
I see.
Why should we put the group of the universities people, not including to the society as a general?
It does include, that's why I said four, means that the society, the government, the
Business.
university, and the industry. So
Okay.
you need the university people because that's where the research usually driven and given input. So you need that
It's like we are
perspective.
giving the feedback to the government. So.
Exactly.
As the
So-
expertise.
and also to the industry people.
So, sir, we have 17
Yeah.
goals set by the United Nations, and all countries, members of the United Nations, should apply this sustainable goal. Like, should start to develop this goal.
Yeah.
Is there any specific priorities to certain countries to develop each goal, sir? Because each country have different
Different
interests, different
interests.
national interests, different public interests, right? So, if we're applying each, let's say the hunger, let's say one country does not have hunger problem. So is there any changing in that or any priority sections?
There's no priority set aside by the international organization or UN as in this context. The priorities would come through process of the countries putting in their priorities rather than it's being imposed from the top, because it depends, like you rightly say,
Yeah.
that some countries in Africa, for example, their main issue might be SDG 1 and 2, zero poverty and zero hunger. And for example, in developed countries, in UK, in the US, their issues might be sustainable cities.
Yes.
So it depends on which priorities area and which main problem that the countries is facing.
Okay, so the privilege is given to the country itself to develop which
Exactly,
SDG that
yeah.
suitable
it's,
enough
it's
for
set
the
by
country.
its own governments, right?
Exactly.
Right.
yeah.
Okay. So, sir, how, as there's SDG, there is MDG. So, what
Yeah.
are the difference between SDG and MDG?
MDG is SDG is continuation. So when you have MDG started in 2010, 2000 is Millennium Development Goal. You've got you've got 8 goals there, and you get 17 goals in SDG 17. So basically, in general, in MDG, is trying to somehow address to half the issues, means half the hunger, half the poverty. But when you have SDG, is an attempt to comprehensively to zero it, like you said just now,
Yes.
zero from the half to the zero achievement. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is that you've got issues like certain contact that become into a bit more detail. When you have 17, of course, you get to be more detailed. But all the 8 goal in MDG is inclusive, is included in the SDG 17. It's just a continuation of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you think that MDG has been really successful during its development, sir?
It depends how you see it, but in general, my reading says that it's not that successful because that's why you need to continue. To certain countries, you manage to halve them. Some issues you are not able to do that. So you need another round of development goals in order to ensure
achieve the
to achieve
goals.
that. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, sir. Do you think that SDG is good? How long SDG will last for? The
So
17
SDG will be until 2030. So you've got 15 years of MDG, you've got another 15 years of SDG. So, but interestingly, you get to see that now the commitment, the engagement of countries toward SDG is better than MDG. Maybe given the kind of ICTs that are being used and kind
development of
concern.
ITs itself,
Exactly.
right?
So you, the support system in
Yeah.
order to make people more aware of it. Yeah.
So let's say we have targeted that 2030 everything will be zero. Let's say, per se, like we are
Yeah.
dreaming of having zero poverty, zero hunger, and whatnot. But what if this 17 SDG fail to fulfill the zero poverties? Will there be another sustainable goal set by the United Nations?
It might come with a different name, just to be a bit catchy, right? Rather than coming there. But the agenda will be the same.
The agenda will be the same.
The agenda will be set in developments to zeroing poverty, which I think is not impossible, meaning that there are still possibilities not successful, because it's not an easy thing to
Yes.
really zero poverty. Which is,
Yes.
if it's not
Right.
impossible, it's going to be very challenging.
Yeah. So SDG is actually really important, yeah.
Yes, correct. But I just want to know, like, how far the Malaysian government tried to achieve these goals.
Okay. Malaysian government is very serious about this. It's not only Malaysian government. All government is supposed to be serious.
Right.
But the seriousness can be reflected through how much you put into structure. A good example how to show that Malaysia is very serious is that you will see how much of the development plan of certain countries, either any one of the ASEAN country, for example, Malaysian development plan would take into considerations the SDG into their planning and into their policy making. So
I
this is one good
see.
indicator how to show that how serious they are.
Okay, so they have national interest and they will put SDGs into the
the
national interest to
Public
provide
policies.
to
So we are going
implement
to
the policy.
know the
right?
details after this year.
Okay,
Inshallah.
so
And
we'll stay tuned on Political Insights. We'll be right
40
back
minutes.
after the break. 40
40
minutes
minutes
with political knowledge.
Ish, nampalah. Alah, nampalah. Nak makan apa ni?
Bombolo ni, bombolo ni.
Bulu ni tu kat sini kan? Tidak. Bola ni, bom bola ni.
Bombolone, bombolone, bombolone. RM2 satu, RM2 satu. Bombolone.
Welcome back to Political Insights.
40 minutes with political
knowledge.
knowledge.
So we were
So-
talking about the introductory part of
Yeah,
SDGs itself.
yeah.
And by the way,
By the way,
we have sponsors, special sponsors to our beautiful furnitures, our beautiful decorations today from
Wow.
Jatima. So
we
thank
have
you
new
so much,
decorations,
Jatimas.
right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So Khalid,
much. Okay, so we have been talking a lot of what the actions taken by the government of Malaysia, and then we are going to know like how effective the actions are. I mean the public policies itself.
Okay, if we talk about policy for sustainable development, it's not something that is very new in the sense that it's something that start from scratch. It's just a matter of like tweaking here and there the existing policy that is there. For example, we've got policy for rural development.
Okay.
Rural development is also an important component of sustainable development means
True.
to ensure the equality between those staying in the city and those people staying in the rural area. So if you talk about effectiveness, policy is there, incentive is there, and support system is there. But I guess in many countries, the issue will always be delivery systems and also the efficiency of the delivery system. And it goes back to implementations. So we talk about political science, these are common things.
Yeah.
Public policy can be very good, sustainable development policy can be very good on the paper, but when it comes to translations and delivering it, that's where the challenge is. So in the case of Malaysia, Alhamdulillah, I think I would say that comparatively with the previous government, the previous government,
Previous,
Okay.
okay.
government, yeah, the previous government, the previous government, the
Under
very recent previous government, yeah,
Okay.
they are stronger than the previous one, yeah,
Okay.
because we just get a new.
True,
Yeah.
true, true.
All right. So I hope that this kind of seriousness and support would continue with the current government, and especially if you look at the announcement just made today on the new list of the cabinet
Yeah, the
minister, you
cabinet
have
has been
one
appointed.
particular ministry that is called environmental ministry
Okay.
that would be mandated to handle this thing.
Okay.
So we are at par with other countries. We are giving a very serious focus on addressing sustainable development. So that would somehow wrap and reflect what do we
True.
mean by effective.
Okay. And sir, we believe that the successful implementation of public policy should be supported by the society itself. So
Yeah.
how far the society of Malaysia do you think supporting the 17 goals?
I would say that the society of Malaysia is the main concern, and
Okay.
society of Malaysia is the main supporter of sustainable development.
Okay.
goal.
Well,
Why? Because all this while, the issues of sustainable development is actually trying to address issues of the society.
yes.
I mean, because all this while, sometimes research, for example, is driven by the industry,
By the
not by the need of the society. We've got people like, for example, in Malaysia, we've got like the top 20 of the society and the middle 40 and the bottom 40. So if you give strong engagement with the society and you get to have input from them, what do they actually need? Do they need a very advanced high-tech technology, or they just need a simple technology that will help them to solve a very basic issues in the rural area? So I would see that society plays a very critical role.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, this is about public interest, right? This is not
Exactly.
about
Yeah,
what the
yeah.
government wants for the country, but it also involves the society as a whole that will affect the effectiveness of the policy itself, right?
Yeah.
But as you know, sir, that UIA itself is one of the key universities in Malaysia that really concerned about SDG. Let's say zero plastic usage, no
Straws.
no plastic straws, no plastic. What do you say? Tampahan. What do you say?
don't
The
know.
Tupperware,
For
right?
towel,
And then
yes, correct.
what are the initiative that IM has been taken about SDGs?
Okay, to start with, I think can say very proudly that there are not many universities that put sustainability or sustainable development as their own strategic missions. So I think it's quite safe to claim that we are the only university that put up word sustainable development exactly in our mission. And as a strategic directions. So that shows that we are very serious about
Yes.
it. Yeah. And on top of that, it's not only sustainable development, it's also like Maqasid Sharia. I'm not sure whether you heard
Maqasid
about
Yes,
this.
al-Sharia.
yes.
So
The
in
protections
UAE, the mission states that is humanizing higher education through Maqasid Sharia and sustainable development,
Mashallah.
which I think very interesting, very dynamic. We combine both religious perspective and an international perspective to it. So in putting this into realities, into actions, we've got many programs.
Yeah.
One that I would like to refer to is what is called flagship program, because sometimes the ideas of sustainability, sustainable development can be a bit complex
Yeah.
and broad to some people. So how do we put this into practice is that we've got projects that we get the researcher, the lecturers, even the students to work together in putting up a project to achieve either SDG 1 until SDG 17.
Okay, so we're learning step by step to achieve each SDG set by United Nations
Correct.
from university level. But sir, during its implementation, there's always complaints from people. There's always complaint from
It's
the
always
society
happening
because,
everywhere.
I don't think we don't really need
Yeah.
this. I mean, like, how does that affect the government from implementing the policy itself? Because so many complaints they receive.
If we were to follow all this complaint, nothing would move. Yeah?
True,
And all this while, because we are listening to the complaint that we've got all this problem of environmental degradation and etc. Yeah, for example, I would say that I was looking from the very beginning, this plastic flower
Okay.
is not really something that reflects sustainability. Yeah, you need to have a fresh flower, but somehow there's just a break in terms of that. So what I'm trying to say here is that people can give complaints, yeah, but we need to move on because, for example, if you look at how the effect of plastic, it can be very seriously affecting the
environment.
animal, for example,
Yeah.
the penyu and etc. But some people would take benefit from manufacturing plastic.
Yeah,
Yes,
true. There's
exactly.
always one party that has to get the
Exactly.
Yes.
benefits.
Yeah. So that's why if you go back to the ideas of that, there is a complaint, but you need to listen to the four stakeholders. The industry people can be complaining because they're making money from that.
Yes.
But the society is suffering from it.
Mm-hmm.
The academia, the researcher is telling the students that you need to get rid of this plastic. And the society is waiting for the solutions. So complaint can be there, but we just need to move on. So one way is that we need to educate them. We need to have a lot more campaign. We need to a lot more of engagement with them so that they can understand. If you want your children, your grandchildren to have the same beautiful river, sea, and etc., you have to stop all these things. So we are not for the sake of our own now. We are
Yeah.
talking about our future
generations.
generations.
Okay. Has that been really effective per se for the business industry? Because as you mentioned before, it's about the economy that we make money out of it, and then suddenly we might lose our job if we don't produce plastics.
Yeah.
Let's say. So how is
It,
that?
it is somehow can affect the employers, right? In the
like,
industry,
how is
they
that
will lose
the
the job.
government plan to tackle it down?
I think there's a lot of concurrent things that need to be done at the same time. Yeah, we've got to recognize something cannot be drastically changed. For example, you want to introduce no straw, so you have to be done staggeredly. So you got to introduce stages by stages. You cannot just and at the same time you need to provide alternative to that.
Yeah.
Means that if you want to stop plastic bag, you've got to provide the paper bag. And that paper bag has to be cheap enough so that it would not affect the restaurateur, for example, the cafe owner. So these are the kind of like strategies that need to be there so that it would not be seen as very drastic that will take away the economic profit and etc.
So the business retail has to learn step by step as
Yeah.
well as we are implementing the policies from the government. We society learn how to implement it in our life and accepting the policy itself, because we complain a lot,
Complain a lot.
because
And at the end of the day, if we are being affected, we are the one
complaining
who
about
complaining
to the
again.
government again. So we're all about complaining. But let's say that what Dr. Zainal has been mentioned before, we have to start moving on. We have to learn that this is not just affecting for 1 or 2 days of our life in this century, but it's going to be affecting our future generation as well, right?
Yes.
So we have to think really, really wise about what we're doing right now. So what we're going to be putting to our policies, then, what are the positive impacts that will be given to our societies, right? And then, sir, how can we as a student or IAM community can contribute to implementation of this SDG, the simple way?
This is the most interesting part. I think it's good that you saved this for the last one. I don't know how many minutes we have. What I've seen is that there's a lot of activities by the students here. Some are still like not taking much of considerations into the need to be more environmentally sustainable, one. Two, I think in Malaysian context, our sustainable development is a bit more towards engaging with the less fortunate, means the poor people and the aborigines. So students, we've got a number of student society, 100 something. Out of this number of student society, how much is going into that kind of issues, and how much is still enjoying a different kind of activities that would affect the environment, will not really helping the society. So what I'm trying to say here is that changing the nature of student society program, which is something that is directly affecting the achievement. And I think in order to do that, the students have to be made aware of the meaning of sustainable development, the need to really engage with this poor group of people, and the need to really get rid of plastic, for
Yes.
example. So these are the kind of activity that can easily be done. But if the inside of the students doesn't believe in that, doesn't have the convictions towards taking care of the environment, it's not easy. So we cannot be telling society to do this and that. It has to come naturally. So there's a lot of opportunities, I think, in order to somehow work together with the university or on the society's own activities towards achieving sustainable development goal.
Okay, so we have to start from the very below level, right? So it's
And we
bottom
need
up.
to give more socializations
Yeah.
to the people,
So
with the understanding and awareness, right?
yeah, so it's not like a sudden shock that, oh, there is this policy being implemented. So what is SDG? Why is it? Why is the
But
government being implemented this?
How
Alright.
far the socialization has been done by
So
the
far,
government?
alhamdulillah, I think Eco Club, for example, has been doing this.
Okay.
So, but what we like to see is that not only Eco Club doing it, even Debate Club.
Yeah.
Yes.
So has to do the same thing, because this is not just
Even the
responsibility.
motions nowadays.
Mhm.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's the kind of like
Correct,
sentiment that got to be there, the understanding that got to be there.
Okay, we have more to talk about SDG. So stay tuned after the break. Stay tuned on Political Insights.
40 minutes with political knowledge.
Okay, welcome
Welcome
back
back
to
to
Political
Political
Insight.
Insight.
40 minutes with political knowledge.
knowledge.
This episode has been really interesting.
Yes, Sophia. Actually, honestly, I didn't know anything about SGD.
Yeah, me
SDG.
too. SDG.
SDG.
SDG. Like before today, we don't really care about SDG, but
Yes.
turns out we've been doing it, like zero
Because
plastics,
we
right?
don't understand how much the effects that will actually contribute to
yeah.
us.
Yeah, but sir,
And
there is always a stagnation or a gap of understanding between these people live in a city and then these people in rural area,
rural areas.
and then they have different needs. So what are the government's tactics to tackle it down? Like how to separate the goals and then how to implement a policy that are different to apply to the city and to the rural area, because they have different needs. And then the policy also may be different. So how does the government work on it?
Yeah. I think this is where the contextualizations of the policy need to be done. And I think this is where the lacking part, where before this, when you develop a policy, is a lump sum, is a general policy, which does not take into consideration that in rural area, there's access to ICT, for example. In the urban area, the issues might be different, might be urban poverty issues.
Correct.
So if you talk about policy to eradicate poverty or to zero poverty, so it has to be approached differently on the urban poverty and the rural poverty. So what I'm trying to say here is that you've got to somehow really customize the policy. So that's what the role of government is, means that you've got to somehow differentiate between different group of people.
Oh, that's why you have the society included into the
Yeah,
four,
exactly. Yeah,
four
yeah.
groups of people that be included into the making of SDGs itself. But in university level, how do we start to educate ourselves or the other students about SDGs? Like, is there any specific subject that we should do or we should learn about?
SDG sustainability is something that is not totally new. The spirit has been there, especially in an Islamic university. If we talk about our care to the environment, it's something that has long been there as a Muslim. But somehow, with the coming of the word sustainable development, it somehow has to be tweaked and to be adjusted. So what we try to do, what we are doing now in the universities in UIA, in IIUM, is that we've got to, we are doing a lot of engagement, seminar, conference, and if you look around, the kind of conference, the kind of topic of conference is
Mhm.
many of them would
Stressing
have
on environmental
SDG and etc. and
SDGs.
sustainability, because at the end of the day, what we're seeing is that the students are the agents of change. The
Mhm.
students are the member of the society. The students are also going to be the leaders of the business people.
Mhm.
So what we want to do is that to make sure that they understand the concept of sustainable
Mhm.
development. So how do we do that? There's a lot of concurrent program. For example, we are having now subjects on introductions to sustainable development within a small group. And for example, I myself in the center itself is doing an engagement with different group of people, the
Yeah.
students leaders,
Mhm.
the student society leaders, and then the mahalah leaders.
Oh.
So we are doing this kind of thing because it has to be a collective effort, as
Yeah.
SDG 17. So on top of that, at the same time, I think how do we do this is that when you know, for example, final year student would have their own final year project.
Yes.
So how do we do is that their project has to be tapped into any activities and to any flagship that I mentioned before,
Mhm.
that it has to somehow go to the society. You cannot just stay within this campus. You won't really
It's
understand.
not like
You
go
should-
to the book, go to
You've
the library.
got to go to the ground. You've
Yeah.
got to swim in the sea. You've got to go
Correct.
underground and understand this kind of thing.
Halid, do you want to do that for your FYP?
I'm doing on it, but in another topics.
Oh, okay. You don't want to go swim
Yeah.
with the penyu and whatnot.
So sir, as we know that it's quite difficult to implement a policy, especially when there is no full enforcement,
Mhm.
right? And we have seen that there is no full enforcement has been done toward the cheaters. I mean, like there are still some
Yeah,
people
yeah,
who
yeah.
are selling using straw and
Yeah.
plastics. And how do we overcome this?
Yeah, I think enforcement in a simple way is not a sustainable way of introducing sustainable development because it has to come from inside. But
Okay.
as a start, you've got to do that, and you've got to do that consistently. Because if you see there are loophole, if you see there are on and off of the implementation, then
Mhm.
people would not take it seriously.
Yeah, true.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's why the right thing to do is that if it is like, for example, now when Selangor start introducing banning the plastic straw, they just have
Mhm.
to come up with very strict enforcement that you
Mhm.
cannot use it.
Mhm.
But sometimes I think even in UAE you can still see
You can still
Yeah.
say
people are
that.
still
that's-
using straw.
yeah.
So the enforcement team need to be there. At the same time, to me, when we talk about sustainable development, we have one term that is called education for sustainable development.
Meaning?
Okay.
ESD means that the kind of awareness that we talk about has to
Uh-huh.
be done structuredly
In every individual.
in any individual and
Structuredly, in a way
every
that-
element. In a
Okay.
way that they've got to be one subject that everyone to be introduced. Like for
Mhm.
example, we don't want to miss people like whoever among the students going out for UAE, for example, not understanding what is sustainable development.
Mhm.
But this is part of it. So,
Mhm.
so I'm not trying to pointing any points anyone, but the fact is that this kind of topic that you pick up is something big, is something great, because we realize that we cannot reach everyone. So everyone has to do their own part and responsibility to do that.
It starts from
So-
ourselves before we go to a bigger
Yeah.
society, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, sir, do you think the Ministry of Education has to introduce that every schools there should be discourse?
Mhm.
It is there in terms of environmental subject.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
That is environmental educations. But environmental education is not the same as education for sustainable development
Correct.
or education for sustainable development. Means that education for sustainable development is more than just about environment,
Mhm.
because you can take care of environment by imposing certain law. But what if that law will be affecting those people who are the poor society, which is not fair?
Yeah.
So the social aspect has to be there. So that's what it means by education for sustainable development. So in that context, to answer your question, is that the ministry is already doing environmental education quite
Okay.
successfully. But what need to be done is to introduce education for sustainable development.
So it has to be more specific, right, about the education that we can
Alright.
impose to other kids. And sometimes I see around that even though we have banned the usage of straw, plastic straw, like sometimes in the cafeteria you have to pay, like if you want to really have straw, you have to pay for 20 cents.
Correct.
So yeah, I think we need someone to just see it, like security government or something, just to see
Yeah.
like this policy has to be implemented, and
But
then
sometimes people will just think it's just 20 cents.
yeah.
So it's
But the other one way of doing that is that we can also incentivize them. I think you have seen a lot of videos and YouTube kind of thing, that
Okay.
whereby if you bring your plastic bottle, your own plastic bottle, and throw it to a
Yes.
particular machine, you are giving in return a ticket to ride the train, a ticket to ride a bus.
Yeah, like
Correct.
in
So that is a
Turkey.
kind of very positive
Very positive.
incentivizations.
Do you think it's going to be really applicable here in Malaysia?
At one time, we were suggesting that machine to be parked in UAE, because I think that's kind of interesting to see that we cannot really stop plastic bottle, because some people need, like for example, handicapped people,
Water.
they need
Yes.
access to that.
Yeah.
But in order to mitigate or to reduce the number, we need to provide this kind of incentive. So
It's like win-win situation, right? Like
Exactly. So
I
it's
give you
win-win.
something, you give me back something.
Yeah.
Like, so
Yeah.
it's not I'm losing something and it's just saving the environment, but then I get nothing in return, right? So this topic is very interesting. Yeah, Sustainable Development Goals. We have the SDGs. We have 17 of them, and
Exactly.
turns out, even though we chose not to care about it, we try to be neglectful about it. We can't deny the fact that it affects our daily life, like the usage of straw, for example, or the usage of water bottle. Because right now we're in desperate of water,
Yes,
but
correct,
then the
correct.
only way to get water is through this water bottle that
Yeah.
is in plastic. So, what were the UIA's way to tackle this down? Because we students were complaining about, "Oh, we need water, but
Yeah,
then the water bottle, like that we've been selling in plastic, is being banned. So, what were the UIA's way to tackle it down?
This, I think, at one time, as you are very much aware of it, there's one time there was an attempt to stop that plastic bottle, and it's quite interesting response from the
Yeah.
students. I think one way of getting this is that first, like we said before, like education has to be there. Second, alternative has to be there. Like now you see water coolers
Yes,
is around,
correct.
Yeah.
but we have to make sure that water cooler is sufficient.
Sufficient.
Yeah, because we do realize that some people, like I said, handicapped people, they really need that. You cannot impose on them. It provide a lot. It give a lot of difficulties for them. But at the same time, I think that ideas of how let the students come up with a suggestion. This is the kind of engagement.
Oh,
Because
yes.
you don't want the university to somehow top down any ways
Yeah.
of handling it. Let's work together about it.
Bottom
on
up.
Bottom
Exactly, the
So
bottom up.
if
yeah.
there is any, wrong way of implementation from let's say the UIAs to the people, so we as a student, we have the rights to not complaining, but give feedback, give solutions. Sometimes people complain without even giving solutions, right? We just complain, yeah, we need water, but not giving exact solutions. I mean, this is bottom up. So meaning that we as a society, we have to contribute as well. We're not just complaining, but we also contribute ideas
Yeah.
to the government per se, what they should do. What are the things that we really wanted that
And
Mhm.
so, how do you see the awareness during you in the university and now?
Yeah.
Okay. During
No,
my
let's
time, I think
recap.
this issue is not that big issue. I was in UAE 91 to
Wow.
96.
I was
It's
not born
not
yet.
that big hoo-ha. Yeah, but I would say that at that particular time, issues environmental is already there. Yeah, but here, I would say that there's a lot more and increased awareness, but the problems has increased as well. So it's not fair to say that it's not happening, it's not progressing well,
Correct.
but the challenge is getting more demanding
Yeah.
compared to before.
Because the users also keep increasing, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so SDG has been a very interesting topic. We thank you so much for the sponsor, Jatima. Thank you so
And
much,
thank you
Dr.
so much,
Zainal,
sir,
for the talks.
coming.
Okay, we stay tuned on the Political Insights, 40-minute political knowledge. See you.
See you.
Wassalamualaikum
Warahmatullahi
warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you for watching us. Political Insights is a collaboration program between IIUN TV and Secretariat of Political Science. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment down below, and hit the notification bell for the latest update on the next episode. Stay tuned.